Hello everyone and good day. My name is Malam Baba Yusuf. This is an audio version of the 5th of July 2024 episode of my weekly column on the Nation newspaper of Nigeria, titled Dear Northern Nigeria, Who Will Save Us From Ourselves? End of quote. For the record, I'm a northerner, a progressive and a patriotic citizen of Nigeria. What some of us have been speaking to in the last 25 years since the beginning of the Fourth Republic in Nigeria is that if we are to remain as one nation, then the unity of Nigeria should be paramount and it should be addressed properly. The current brutal socio-economic situation in Nigeria must be reversed immediately. This is why I wish to draw the attention of Nigerians, especially northerners, to the alignment of some pressure groups that are currently coming together in northern Nigeria, apparently in anticipation of the 2027 elections, when we are not even yet sure if we will get to 2027 alive before hunger will finish all of us. Let me remind us that some of these northern politicians are the same people that during the build-up to the 2023 elections gave justifications that the presidency should shift to southern part of Nigeria, since the northern part of Nigeria had enjoyed 8 years of presidency under President Muhammadu Buhari, and rightly so. Interestingly, during the tenure of President Buhari, some of them were governors, legislators, political party leaders, etc. The question is, what did they do during their own tenures? And how come some of them that were at the forefront of the campaign for President Tinubu and ensured his success at that time started working against his administration less than 1 year in office? Obviously, because they were not getting what they expected. I would have taken them more seriously if their intentions were genuine and consistent, which obviously is not so. At this crucial moment in the history of Nigeria, when the country is highly polarized along ethnic, tribal, and religious sentiments more than ever before, I was taken aback to see the sublime position of some of those politicians. Look, I don't have any qualms with having national discussions, with the elites coming together to see how we can pressure any government, I repeat, any government in power that have failed to deliver its mandates. Because as far as I'm concerned, political parties in Nigeria or politicians are the same actors in different costumes. Therefore, in my opinion, the cyclical and abysmal failure of the political class of this country is not about a political party. So I am only keen to see political leaders coming together to speak with a view to ensuring that we put governments on their toes, whether it is the APC at national or other parties at some national levels. I do not subscribe to regionalizing political conversations at this point in time in the history of this country, simply because some politicians have not gotten what they wanted in the current administration of President Tinubu that they supported to enthrone. After all, they are the same people that went as far as insulting our northern elders, which includes my parents and your parents, in their efforts to convince Nigerians that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the right person to lead Nigeria. Only for them to do an about-face with tongue-in-cheek to shamelessly start going around to greet the same elders they were insulting, and to indicate that the government they vehemently supported to power is not a good government. The gaslighting attitude of politicians should no longer be supported by citizens, especially northerners. I guarantee that the same politicians will have no qualms doing another about-face again to tell us that we should endure the Tinubu administration, even though they were condemning the government just a day before, in a manner of speaking, so long as they get what they want. And that is what happens even at state levels. Our positions as citizens should be based on our realities and what we want, not what these self-serving politicians tell us. This type of self-serving politicking is promoted by most of our northern political leaders and should be discountenanced by northerners. Indeed, I rather take seriously and respectfully the contributions of political leaders who have been consistent in their positions, because those politicians can be considered more focused and genuine, better than these latter-day prophets. Therefore, we should stop being gullible and start looking through politicians whose only interests are not for the people, but only for themselves, their families, and their friends. The longer we continue to remain gullible and playing into the hands of ethnic and tribal jingoism, the longer it will take us to get out of the current debilitating socio-economic malaise in Nigeria, if at all. After all, hunger, diseases, poverty, insecurity, etc. do not select tribes, ethnicity, religion, or region. We should be able to see through them and going forward decide for ourselves who we should elect at national and subnational levels, because the bottom line is that these politicians do not care about us. We should no longer put our destiny in their selfish hands. Dear compatriots, let me remind us that out of over 160 million multidimensionally poor Nigerians, 70% are from core northern Nigeria. This horrible poverty index was majorly achieved during the 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's tenure. It is worthy of note that President Buhari was supported, he was supported by a lot of northern political leaders who he gave leadership position, and also elected governors and legislators who mostly failed woefully to deliver their mandates, but rather left their states worse than they met them in abject poverty, heightened insecurity, and perpetual indebtedness. What a shame. I dare say that we should no longer listen to such leaders as our torchbearers, because they keep leading us into the abyss of darkness and backwardness. They have betrayed our trusts and confidence, not once, but many times over. If we continue to follow such leaders gullibly, then we have ourselves to blame for continuing suffering. Accordingly, I'm yet to see anything grand about the ongoing political grandstanding by some northern political leaders under the guise of quote-unquote moves to save the North, or moves to save Nigeria, quote-unquote. Does that sound familiar? Whereas they have been part of the political processes and structures of Nigeria for the past 25 years since the return of democracy in Nigeria. By the way, the northern politicians do not have the monopoly of the aforementioned distasteful political credentials. Politicians from all geopolitical regions in Nigeria also hold the same awful credentials. Albeit as a northerner, my focus of discussion today is on the politicians from the northern part of Nigeria, given that since after the glorious time of the likes of late Sir Ahmadu Bello, late Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Malam Aminu Kano, Malam Sa'ad Zungur, Chief Joseph Taka, Chief Sunday Awoni, etc., to mention a few. Unfortunately, most of the current political leaders have woefully failed to deliver their mandates. Having enjoyed the privileges of good leadership and good governance when they were growing up at that time, they have betrayed all the values that trained them. Most of them came from humble backgrounds, and yet they were given equal opportunities and level playing fields which they have shamelessly now cornered for themselves and their cohorts, while their people wallow in abject poverty and strife as they sheepishly go about with the wicked and narcissistic aloofness and sense of entitlement, except for a few of them. The bottom line is that there is an increasing number of Nigerians who are now seeing through these politicians and their allies, that for them it is all about leveraging the levers of politics and power, i.e., divisiveness, ethnic, tribal, and religious sentiments to achieve their parochial interests. The hypocrisy and total lack of strategy or empathy of most of our politicians is sickening. It is time to call out those northern leaders for what they are: pathologically selfish, period. They have no intelligent and coherent plan for the people. Their political interests are only for themselves and their children. Majority of northern politicians have successfully ensured that they have killed what remained of the education structure and system built by the vanguards of our liberation from colonialism. Knowing that education is the bedrock of our society, it is a shame that they have destroyed what they benefited from. With an appalling level of illiteracy, with no clear plan to help us exit this situation apart from the photo shoots and mantras, I wonder how the North will make any significant progress without education. The state of insecurity in Nigeria is worsening. Increasing infant maternal mortality and increasing multidimensional poverty. I can go on and on. Things are so bad that currently in northern Nigeria, human beings have begun to eat grass and compete with animals for the food that hitherto they were solely reserved for animals. Dear northern elders, where are the visions? What are the priorities? What are the values? Importantly, as northern Nigerians, we have also not helped as citizens, we have not helped ourselves due to our wanton laziness, sense of entitlement, and misplaced priorities. Therefore, I advise that 2027 should be about values, strategy, clear vision, demonstrable capacity and integrity, which as citizens we must follow toe to toe, with consistently constructive demands for good governance from our leaders, from local government level to presidential level. What is even more worrisome is how most of the quote-unquote new breed northern politicians are already inflicted and sucked in by the horrible hydra-headed monsters of corruption and self-serving style of political leadership, as we can see even in the current administration of President Tinubu, where he had to take out some of these people from his administration for matters of corruption. Accordingly, I urge us that going forward, it is no longer enough for politicians to convince us to elect or even rig people into office, only for them to run into the crowd of the masses and start pointing accusing fingers at their hitherto co-travelers, shamelessly pretending to be working for our own interests. In my opinion, those kind of political leaders are hypocrites and enemies of their people. In closing, I leave us with a Nigerian state parlance that says, our mumu suppose don't do, quote and unquote. Thank you for listening, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.